Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. And today we have a special guest. It's Bill Cadwallader. And Bill is a certified electromagnetic radiation specialist. He also is an author. He wrote the book Exposed. And he has been in many health summits, EMF health summits. Bill also can be reached at stopdirtyelectricity.com. He's also a coach for the Building Biology Institute.
Bill provides on-site EMF inspections in Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and Southern California. And we're really excited to have him on the show today. He's got a wealth of information to show you everything you need to know about EMF.
So you can reduce EMF exposure in your home, to your family, children, environment, and pets as well. So welcome, Bill.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me here. I sure appreciate it and the opportunity to get this most important subject out. And I have a PowerPoint that we'll go through, and I want to mention that, remember, we have solutions. So we'll talk about issues, but we will have solutions, and that's the most important thing.
What really triggered you to start studying and looking into it?
So I've been in IT or computers all my life. So I've worked in the university, I've worked in the corporate, I've worked in government, federal and county government. And we had at my last job, I had a coworker, and every time I saw him, he held his cell phone up to his head. When he was going out to his car, when he came in, before meetings, after meetings, and he developed a huge tumor right where he held the cell phone. So not in the front, not on this side, not on this side, not on the back, but right where he held that cell phone. And he had surgery, and he had massive chemo, and we had a sigh of relief. It grew back. Surgery, massive chemo, and then he died. And at that moment in time, he left a wife who is now a widow. He left 7 children who are now fatherless. And at that moment in time, I knew the industry was never going to tell us how to use our electronic devices in the safest possible mode. So from there, what I did is I became certified, and it's almost a 2-year program. And there's 15 courses, and it takes almost 2 years to get certified. And there's only about 30 of us certified electromagnetic radiation specialists who are actually working and in the US at this point in time. And that's what I've done, and I've been involved with this since 2010. And that's unfortunately how I got involved, and that's why I do inspections. We wrote the book, and last year when we wrote the book and had it released, it was #1 in all of Amazon in new releases in the health, fitness, and safety area. So if someone wants to read a book, we have a book. If they want an inspection, if they want a consultation over the phone, we also have something we'll speak at the end. We have this great brochure, 10 ways you can reduce your radiation exposure right now. It's all free, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We're just trying to get the message out, and I sure appreciate you giving me the opportunity to get this so important information out to your viewers.
Yeah, we agree. Thank you for your time and your vast knowledge. Bill and I have spent some time together already, and I'm just so excited for you to share with this group what you've learned and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, one of the things for me too, it's seeing how children today are using technology in a way that we have never seen before. Even babies now they know how to use a cell phone. Like 7-8 months old babies are already using electronics. Right. And it's just because we don't have the knowledge. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to see your presentation.
So this is a PowerPoint I've given many times. Each time I give it, I put the most current information in it, and we change slides and add slides. So let's get to it.
All right.
So we have to share it here. And there we are. So we're going to talk about 5G and electromagnetic radiation. So let's get to the next slide. So I'm Bill Cadwallader. I have an MBA and I'm a certified electromagnetic radiation specialist. I'm the author of, I'm an author, again, a certified electromagnetic radiation specialist. And here's the book that you've already seen, Exposed, The Electronic Sickening of America and How to Protect Yourself, including and so why should you care? That's always a question. So there's a lot to care about. Your health is at risk. Your children and grandchildren are in great peril. And Fernanda, you already talked about that, about kids. Your privacy is now compromised and the environment is affected. You are wired to care. And so let's look at the first one, your health. So glioblastoma multiforme brain tumors, GBMs for short, are on the rise in the Netherlands, England, Denmark, and Australia. A USC study confirms this. And look at those 7 names up at the top. Those are people we know personally who developed a brain tumor. So let me ask you, when everyone was in their early 20s, how many people knew about people that had brain tumors? It's like none. And unfortunately, the last 2 have now passed away. So let's look at the Netherlands, 1989. Just background, cell phones were introduced in the mid to late 80s. But look at that, all the way over at 1989, all the way up to 2010, they doubled and sometimes tripled. So let me ask you, if fatalities in the US, car accidents in 1 year tripled or doubled with the accidents and deaths, do you think the US government would be doing something? Yes,
Absolutely.
they would. But
Seatbelt.
look at this.
Whatever.
They have not done anything at all. And you'll say, well, that's just the Netherlands. In 1995 and 2015, look at the red line starting at 3 on the left-hand side. And look how that has grown. So brain tumors have doubled in England as well. And these are glioblastoma multiforme. And then even Denmark, look at that red line toward the bottom. And look how far they have gone up as well, 1995 to 2017. And risk of brain cancer by years of wireless phone use. So if you use a phone unsafely, and we'll cover how to use these phones safely. If you use it for 1 to 5 years, you have a 20% increase of brain tumors. And look, if you use it more than 10 years unsafely, you can have up to 180% greater chance of brain tumors. Boy. And that's what the statistics look. Let's get personal. And this is what a friend of mine looks like. Look at that. Right there where a cell phone is held. That's what they do to get the brain tumor out. And just today, someone told me they had a friend and they had a brain tumor almost the size of a grapefruit in their head. But the good news is we have solutions. So let's continue. Study finds sharp rise in colon cancer and rectal cancer rates among young adults. How can that be? Let's look a little closer. So look at the top left, ages 65 and above. They're dropping. That makes sense. But now look at the bottom right, 20 to 49. They've almost doubled. In some studies, they've actually tripled. How can that be? In older adults, they're going down, but younger adults are going up. So let's look. Could it be due to poor nutrition? Could it be sedentary lifestyle? Yeah. Maybe some of this obesity, but are there other risk factors? Could texting and carrying a cell phone be another possible contributor? Most people don't know that a cell phone goes off every 6 to 30 seconds, even if you're not making a call. It's trying to connect to the nearest cell tower, Bluetooth, or Wi-Fi device. And it's thousands of times a safe level. And look at this. On the top left, that's where more guys carry it. On the previous slide, they were women. And look at this lady. She's expecting, and look where that cell phone is. Look how close that is. That cannot be good. It's not just cancer. Look at neurobehavior symptoms near cell towers, and these are about just the top 16. So look at in the center, the top red, that's when and these numbers are in meters, so that's about 10 meters, which is about 30 feet away. And look how it is. And then when you come to the front, you get about 900 feet away, which is 300 meters or so, and see how much it goes down. So look at all these neurobehavior symptoms that people are affected by the cell towers, just living close to them. And Egypt, prevalence of neuropsychiatric complaints. So Egypt is one of the few places where we have a control group. So there's places in Egypt where there are no cell towers. So we can compare those where there are cell towers. And look at these: headaches, memory, dizziness, tremors, depressive symptoms, sleep. Look, they're all 20%, 9 to 20, over 28 or over 28% higher. Again, significantly higher among those exposed to cell tower radiation that controls. And this is important when I talk about 5G. So let's look at some other things. Radiation health risks, cancer, most common, brain cancer, breast cancer, multiple myeloma, plus melanoma. I'll talk to melanoma a little bit later. Cancer, ovarian cancer, pancreatic cancer, as well as thyroid and uterine cancer. We'll talk about that happened at a school. And also non-cancers, ADD, ADHD, Alzheimer's, blood-brain barriers at risk, blood pressure, chronic fatigue. Also skin issues and diabetes, as well as fibromyalgia and even hair loss. Heart problems, especially pain, pressure, palpitations. So I was at a show and a nurse came up to me and she said, the doctors are starting to get problems with their hearts. They're starting to get palpitations and other things. I said, where do they carry their cell phone? They have a pocket just on their left side, and that's where they're carrying their cell phones. Remember, these things go off every 6 to 30 seconds, even if you're not making a call, and they interfere with the heart rhythm. And I said, well, how about nurses? Nurses probably have the same problem. Nurses' pockets are actually on their side. They have more issues with the lower organs in their body because that's where they carry their cell phones. Also, miscarriages and multiple sclerosis. On miscarriages, let me just bring up a Kaiser Permanente study that was done last year, and they had over 900 ladies. And what they determined is the higher their radiation exposure, the higher the miscarriages rates were. And that was done by Kaiser Permanente. You can look up that study, a direct cause. And the reason this is important is it's such a small amount of time. So it's less than 9 months. And a lot of studies take longer, but this was less than 9 months. And then finally, numbness, tingling sensations, Parkinson's, tremor, and muscle spasms weakens the immune system as well. And so we know this about electromagnetic radiation. It damages the DNA. There's no question about that. Compromises the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is a barrier that's around the blood vessels in your brain, so toxic elements, metals, whatever can't migrate to your brain. They've done studies where as little as 2 minutes to 5 minutes holding a cell phone up, it actually starts to open up that blood-brain barrier. And these toxic elements or toxic heavy metals will start to migrate to the brain, start to begin to do that. And we were never designed that. And the third thing is weakens the immune system, produces stress proteins, disrupts cell communication, and interferes with the uptake of calcium. There's a big study now on that, voltage-gated calcium channels, and they show that it disrupts that. But let's let's get realistic. Could radiation be the straw that broke the camel's back? Now, we're not saying that every single radiation, every single sickness and cancer in the world is caused by radiation, but could it be the catalyst to actually push people over the edge? That's what we're saying. So what's it doing to our children and grandchildren? Fernanda, I know you talked about that. So that's the second thing we're going to look at. How can that be good when a child holds a phone to their head that's almost half the size of their head? That cannot be good. And I go to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, Nevada, so the last one I went to. I look at particular consumer electronics and what the latest stuff is. Almost all of it's wireless now. So let's look at just some of the things I found last time I was there. So here it is. There's a baby bottle. It's a Bluetooth baby bottle. The phone that the parent owns tells the parent what the temperature of the milk is and how full it is. So now the baby is wrapping its arms around a cell tower, a small cell tower. That cannot be good. And you'll say, it can't get any worse than that. Look at this. These are Wi-Fi diapers. So now on a cell phone, on a smartphone, it tells the parent if the baby is wet or not. And look how close that is. I mean, I just can't tell you how bad that is. You'll say it can't get any worse than that. Let me give you one more slide. Look at that.
No.
It's a wireless pacifier. Now, and it tells the temperature of the baby. And now the baby is sucking on a cell tower. Wow. That is not good. And these were just 3 of all the things I've seen. And I'm just heartbroken. I'm just telling you, it is really bad. And here it is, Wi-Fi babies. No pre-market studies on any of this and no long-term studies. It's just out there. Boy, is that terrible.
Wow.
And so also,
information is really heartbreaking. Like I cannot believe this is even allowed to be sold.
Right. So what happened in 1996 is in the US, they started a new telecommunication law. And the law was actually written by the cell phone companies, the telecommunication companies, they're included in that, as well as the electrical utilities. And so one of the things that they did was they set a limit of how much radiation they can have. So normally we want radiation, wireless radiation. If someone's very, very sensitive, we want it under 10, and I'll use a term, microwatts per meter squared. Sometimes they're measured in different measurements, but let's just use that. But a lot of times, people are okay with 100 or 110 or 150. The federal government set the limit at 10 million microwatts per meter squared. So literally, the only way you can get that is if you put your pillow on a cell phone tower. And they fought this since 1997, 96, 97, 22 years later, and it's never been reduced. And they did that full well, knowing that any device they ever produce would never exceed that limit.
So on that, just one question on that. So the studies that have been made, they're all independent studies, and the government is not accepting those studies, or they're not looking at it, them just turning their back to it, right?
I'll get to that a little bit later, but
Okay.
That's a very good question. There's over 5,000 independent studies that have been done that show radiation at this level, this distance from a person, and for this amount of time. And in my book, I call it DDT, dosage, distance, and time. And they've said these are the cancer or health effects related, but the federal government just ignores that. And the FCC, which is responsible for the safety of all the wireless signals, is now the head of the FCC is a former attorney for the Verizon wireless company.
I was going to say it's basically the fox guarding the hen house now. Yeah, exactly. I heard about that. Wow. So that just happened recently?
He was appointed recently. Before that, it was another telecommunications. It was, before that, the gentleman was the actual head of the cell phone lobbyist group.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's just, unfortunately, that's what happens. They fought it for 22 years. So at this point, what we do is we show people how to use these things as safe as possible.
Right.
And that's sort of where we are on this whole thing. And unfortunately, also in that law, most people don't know, so in the 1996 law, they said you can never deny a cell phone placement, placement of a cell phone tower rather, for any health or environmental reasons.
Wow.
What else would you want to deny it for? So they wrote that right into the law. And the cell phone companies, the public utilities companies wrote that law, and then Congress just stepped, unfortunately. Yeah. And I'll talk a little bit about how much influence they have as we go on. But that's why there's no pre-market studies and no long-term studies on this.
Mm-hmm.
So also there's some other issues besides health. Kids can't remember stuff. Digital overdosing is literally changing the way our brains are processing and retained information. There was a big study done on that. And our brains, and especially the developing brains of our children, were never designed to handle the constant assault of radiation or to process the extreme sensory overload. The physical, mental, and emotional health of our young people are at great risk. And look where that baby is holding that tablet right next to his abdomen. Every 6 to 30 seconds, that goes off with thousands of times the safe radiation levels. Wow. It's just, and one of the reasons we're doing this is 95% of the people don't know that this is dangerous. So that's why I talk a lot. I do a lot of presentations. I have websites, I have a book, we have brochures. We're just trying to get the message out so people will understand. Because I know if parents knew what it was doing, then they would take the steps we'll discuss toward the end to limit the radiation. But parents just don't even know. They think they're safe.
That's so true. And I've been there. I used to think that was like, oh my gosh, look how smart he is. He knows how to operate a cell phone. Right. And I thought that was awesome. And then all the apps, they make the apps in a way that it's like, oh, look at that. He can call her on the iPhone, on their iPad, or whatever it is. So, it's just easier when you go out the doctor's office. You just give the kid the iPhone, or you give the kid the tablet.
Right. And we'll show you how to make those 100% safe. Mm-hmm. So that's the good news. If you download an app and they're playing a little app, this is from the radiation side. There's also pediatrics organizations that say a child should only look, not the radiation sense, but just spends a minimum amount of time on these electronic devices. That's a whole nother issue.
Right.
But let's continue here. So the third thing is privacy a thing of the past? What's on your lamppost? So Huntington new smart fusion poles. Those are cell towers right on that lamppost. And the people down below have no idea. They're walking right next to a cell tower. They're just a light post. No one knows. They hide them.
That's a new one for me.
Yeah.
And what we do not know about 5G, we're talking a little bit about 5G now, should scare you. The potential for disease and abuse is incalculable. So all these represent sensors or cell phone antennas that are hidden. And the fact is, there have been no pre-market studies on 5G, no long-term studies similar with the Wi-Fi babies, no opportunity for individuals to opt out of this technology. It will be everywhere. So on those light posts on that sidewalk, do you have a choice whether or not you walk? I mean, you don't have a choice to guard yourself walking by those light posts. And then be smart, be connected. 5G isn't just another generation. So the G stands for generation, 5G, 4G, 5G. It can use new technologies called the millimeter wave. So they're actually giving us higher frequencies, which actually have higher radiation. So in order for 5G, and they call it the Internet of Things, that's where all the things, or most of your electronic items, will actually talk to other electronic items, smart devices, to work together. So to do that, what you need the 5G infrastructure. And there are some more cell towers on those lights. So some of the things that are really important to get 5G to work, the density, it will be everywhere. Smaller cell antennas will be every 2 to 12 homes. And last year they changed the regulation that now you can put up a cell tower within 200 feet of another cell tower. What? So, yep, they just changed that, and you have no say on that at all. And so you're going to have massive density at that point. And also you're going to have the second item, massive MIMO. So massive multiple input, massive multiple output, meaning you'll have so much more data being sent and received. And the smartphone, the third thing, will act as a hub of everything. So everyone will control everything on their smartphone, similar to what we showed you with the baby bobble, the Wi-Fi diapers, and the pacifier. That was all controlled by your smartphone. And if it's in the infrastructure, there is no opt-out. You cannot opt out of a cell tower going in front of your house. And then also sensors already being installed, and you won't necessarily be able to identify them. So there's a lot of issues with the smart speakers now, that people are talking, and then other organizations or other software companies are picking up what they're saying, and then they're actually, maybe if you do a search, maybe what you were talking about will now come up on a search. And there was one large smartphone company, I won't name the company itself, but they actually admitted that they were listening to their smart speakers. They were listening and to reviewing what people were saying, even though they didn't have permission. Wow. So don't be fooled just because it doesn't look like a cell tower. That sort of looks like a palm tree. From a distance, it would look more like a palm tree. And again, just because it doesn't look like a cell tower, all these things at the top, and then over here, all of these items, are actually cell towers. Doesn't mean it is any less dangerous. So 4G and 5G, what's the difference? So 4G is what we have now, 4G and 4G LTE. It broadcasts continually 24/7 in a broad area, similar to a television or a radio. But 5G will actually carry a lot more radiation. I've seen reports that it can carry up to 70 times the radiation. It's a beam forming technology, sort of not quite as fine as a laser beam, but something very, very fine like that. Also, smaller antennas closer to users. So now they can put up antennas within 200 feet of the next antenna. So global internet coverage. Let's talk a little bit about satellites. Well, what's happening to the satellites? What do you mean? What will this do to our planets? So let's look at this. More satellites are required. How many more? So they're starting to put up Wi-Fi satellites. So it'll actually start coming from space. According to the UN, in 2019, there were about 5,000 satellites in orbit. 2019. So that's a lot of decades, right? So let's see what they're doing with the Wi-Fi satellites. 13 companies are now competing to cover the entire Earth with high-speed global internet low orbit satellites, which began in 2019. SpaceX, Elon Musk, originally got 12,000. Now that he might even get up to 42,000 satellites, just him. OneWeb, over 4,500 satellites. Samsung, over 4,600. And that's just the top 13 companies. That's just the top 3 companies. So think about these numbers. And since 1958, over 60 years, we've only had 5,000 satellites. It's crazy. And then every rocket launch represents a tremendous degree of pollution to the Earth's atmosphere. And then radiation from above. The proliferation of global internet coverage orbiting Earth could result in ecological chaos, deployment from space. Contrary to popular perception, wireless technology is neither sustainable nor environmentally friendly. So now we say, hey, we're trying to avoid some cell towers on the ground. Now you're going to have them up in the air. How do you avoid those? Big, big problem. So there's also another thing. Now this is non-radiation related, but I just wanted to put this up. Astronomers, SpaceX, which is Elon Musk, are blocking the view of the stars now. So there are only 122 of these Starlink satellites from SpaceX. They're currently in orbit as of December 2019. That's not too many, but they're already leaving bright streaks across their images and obscuring the stars. You'll say, how can that be? What is it going to look like? Here it is. Look at that. The stars are in the background. The streaks are actually these satellites, and this was taken from the Lowell Observatory in November of this year. So look at that. And now if that's 122, what happens if you have 42,000, 50,000? Yeah, and again, that's not a radiation. I mean, this has to do with astronomy, but I just thought I would put that in. So why isn't everyone sounding the alarm? Boy, these are a lot of issues. We looked at a lot of issues. So let's look, why isn't everyone sounding the alarm? So let's look at some ads in the... How can that be? Look at this doctor, 20,000 physicians like Lucky cigarettes. Wow. And even celebrities were advertising cigarettes. So the first study to link smoking with lung cancer was published in 1929. We have that in the book, and we actually have timelines for like smoking, for asbestos, and we show that even though they knew all of this was bad decades before, because of government and industry or in collusion, nothing was done. And actually, the tobacco companies finally settled with the states in the early 2000s. Didn't have any blame, but the states just got some money. So how long did it take, again, to reveal the lies and reveal the truths, expose lies? Decades. 60,000 studies it took when the states settled. 60,000 studies? So I often ask someone, well, how many studies would it take you to maybe change some of your habits on your cell phone and other things? You know, would it take 6? You know, most people will say, oh, maybe 10, 20, maybe 100. Let's see how many studies we have so far. There are over 5,000 scientific studies linking exposure to electromagnetic radiation, electromagnetic fields, to a very large number of diseases. And I often ask people, how many studies will it take? And it increases every single year. The Bioinitiative report originally came out in 2007, and they've updated it 2012 as well as 2019. And that's the studies. So what is electromagnetic radiation is the tobacco of the digital age, and like tobacco and smoking, it can kill you. Mm-hmm. So again, why isn't everyone sounding the alarm? I mean, there's 5,000 studies. I mean, everyone should be going crazy, right? Money, money, money. That's the reason we do not know about this. Money, money, money. And you can take control now. Let's go back to that last slide real quick. So in Berkeley, the city of Berkeley just wanted to have a nice little 3x5 card to say, hey, when you buy a cell phone, make sure you use it, constructively, and, don't be careless with it and everything else. The cell phone company fought Berkeley. They said, you cannot tell customers that using a cell phone in a certain way will cause problems. They said you cannot say. And they fought it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And just in the last several days, the Supreme Court said, City of Berkeley, you can put a disclosure in that says if you use a cell phone incorrectly, there can be ramifications. but the cell phone company fought them all the way to the Supreme Court. So it's almost like in the 60s in the US, there were no warnings on cigarette packs. So in the mid-19s, start to see some warnings on cell phones in the US. Isn't that crazy? You can take control now. Yes. Crazy, isn't it? Don't wait for it. I'm sorry.
And I think the problem too is that it's so convenient, right?
Yes.
It's convenient. Technology is convenient. Especially like if you have a child, you give them a teenager, it's convenient that they have a cell phone that you can talk to them at all the time, or you can find them and you can track on a GPS. It's convenient that you have everything on the tip of your fingers. But at the same time, I think the conversation is just now starting to come out more often. And in the beginning, I remember talking to other friends and they looking at us being like, oh my gosh, you guys are not talking about this. Like they look at us like you were talking about, ETs. Right. But I feel like what you're doing, and the more we can talk, the more we can expose people, the more we can bring awareness, not just on the bright side of what, can all the good things that it's bringing to us, but at what cost?
Exactly. And we have safer ways of using all this technology. And that's what we're trying to say. Make people aware that there is an issue, and then here are the solutions. Because if we just say, hey, here's a problem, but have no solutions, what good is that? So almost when I go out to a home, so I also do interactive EMF audits and remediations. And when I go out to a home, I'll have a good, better, and best solution. So sometimes people can do the best solution, so that's great. Sometimes they can only do the better solution, so that's good. I'm just looking for any improvement in there. And we can, normally in a normal house, we could reduce the radiation by a lot, the way they're using. And it's just changing simple little habits. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about those in our 10 ways of reducing radiation. So again, it's all money related. And at this point, I wanted to let you know that last year, so most people think pharmaceuticals. In our book, we have the leading lobbyists. And so most people think, oh, pharmaceuticals have to be the biggest, right? Yeah, that's right. So there were about 270 million last year. The telecommunications and electrical utilities were $410 million. That's not marketing. That's not advertising. That's $1. That's $100 from my pocket if I'm a telecommunication executive to a senator, to a representative talk, or I'm taking them out to lunch, or I'm playing golf or something like that. $410 million. Wow. Or I use that money to run my reelection campaign. So, and that's what this is: money, money, money. So you can take control now. Don't wait for industry and the government to catch up in the research. And in my book, I have timelines for BPA, for BPA, and we'll show you how they knew, like BPA, they knew it was a problem in the 1930s, like 1937, 38. When did we find out about BPA? 90s? 2000s or something like that, when they started to do non-BPA bottles. So again, it's out there. We cannot totally escape the presence of, again, EMRs, but we can greatly reduce our exposure. There are solutions. There are scientific and measurable. So let's get started. So any questions or comments on the first part?
So I think that's great information. I thought I knew a lot about EMF and 5G, and there are a lot of shocking facts that you just shared with us that it's very important for us to know.
I was going to say, I like how you focus. It's kind of what we're doing with this whole project we're working on, is how do we live in this new world with all this new technology and still enjoy it, but use it responsibly. I think that's one of the greatest takeaways I'm getting from this, and I constantly focus on, is focusing on the positive, this stuff's not going away. And obviously, shockingly, is getting tremendously more in our face, so to speak. I mean, talking about blanketing the whole planet with satellites, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, so yeah, thanks. That really makes sense.
So what to do? First, a little background. So let's give you a little background as well. So there are two types of radiation. There's radiation through the air. There's wireless, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth, commonly called RF. And then there's radiation from the wires, electric radiation, magnetic radiation, and what's called dirty electricity, okay? So electric magnetic radiation sources. So we normally, at the bottom, we normally think about this big tower, right? But all of these actually create magnetic and can create electric radiation. So, but we're all about solutions today. So solutions to electric and magnetic radiation from the wires, cut power whenever possible. So if you have let's say you have a TV, a smart TV. So if normally if it's plugged in, there's still a Wi-Fi component that's still happening with that TV. So any device you have in the house that has a wireless component, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, or wireless, you want to cut the power to it, meaning you have to put it on a power strip to literally turn the power off, because it's staying awake saying, hey, someone might send me a wireless signal, the TV, so I want to be able to react. So increase distance from the source, that's always a good thing. And then again, turn off whenever possible, like kitchen appliances and things like that. So if you have a kitchen appliance with no Wi-Fi component, Wi-Fi, wireless, Bluetooth, you can just turn those off. But whenever you have a Wi-Fi, wireless, Bluetooth component in a device, you always want to cut the power, turn the power, cut the power to that source with like a power strip. And then the third type of radiation from the wires is what's called dirty electricity, is another kind of radiation from the wires. And I have, if you go to my website, Stop Dirty Electricity, under Common Concerns, I have more detail on this, actually more devices. And in the back of my book, also in Appendix A, for every room in the house, I have any possible wired device or any possible wireless, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth device that could be a problem. So dirty electricity comes from electronic devices, and this is on the left side, this is like the smooth electricity, and then these things sort of piggyback. They're spikes of radiation happening thousands of times a second that are piggybacking along your electricity. So some of these create them. So if you have this type of bulb, I always recommend that you get rid of this curly Q bulb. Dimmer switches can do it. We'll talk a little bit about this smart meter, and then any type of electronic device. They don't run on 120 volts. That's the voltage in our walls. They run on 24 volts or less. Whenever you have to convert the 120 volts to 24 volts or less, which all electronics run on, it creates spikes of radiation thousands of times a second. Technically, I'll just throw in one technical, it's called high frequency voltage transient harmonics, but you don't have to remember that. Dirty electricity is a lot easier. So you'll say, dirty electricity, is it really a problem? Let's look at a middle school that was in California. Let's look at that first number, 24. 24 teachers and staff at a single middle school got cancer. 24 teachers, that's a lot. You'll say it can't get any worse than that. Look at that number. Former students who went to that middle school 3 years or less, when they got in their 20s, developed cancer. So far, 49 students in their 20s have developed cancer. Let me ask you, when you were in your 20s, how many of your friends had cancer?
None.
Zero.
None, zero, maybe I get one sometimes. This is 49 at a single school. Something's wrong. And the 12 is the worst number of all. 12 have died. 6 teachers and staff have now died, and 6 students have now died. And let's look at the top 3 cancers. 13 times the melanoma was in that school than should have been. 13 times the thyroid cancer, 10 times the melanoma and 9 times the uterine cancer. And that was just the top 3 cancers. And you'll say, well, they must have done something, right? They must have shut down the school, right? Something must have happened. So a epidemiologist, an MD, and a master of public health who worked in the Department of Washington's health department was actually retired living down there. He after hours went in to the school, measured all the rooms, determined the very high levels of dirty electricity, and then shortly after that wrote a nice letter to the principal and to the superintendent of the school and said, you know, I don't know if you have a problem, but I'd be happy to clean this up for free. The next letter he got was from a LA law firm that said, if you ever set foot on that school again, we'll arrest you under the Homeland Security Act. So nothing has been done.
So when was this, when did that happen?
So the school was built in 1990, and the first report was done in about 2005, and these are numbers as of about 2018.
Wow.
And they just deny it. It's just complete denial.
Wow. And you know, not only the dirty electricity, but you think now kids, all the kids have iPads in school too.
And this was before they had all those iPads. This was done, you know, the first report was done in 2005 when there were some cell phones kicking around, not too much, and there was no Wi-Fi at the school at all, you know, in 2005.
To clarify, you said this was primarily due to dirty electricity.
Yeah, what they did is there was no Wi-Fi in the school in 2005. They had nothing like that, and they measured other types of radiation from the wire. The one that was extreme over the top was the dirty electricity. So that was what the MD, the epidemiology, and the Master of Public Health felt, that it was the dirty electricity that was the major cause.
So in our home, where would we see the dirty electricity? That, as you're saying, would be on the TV, that it's plugged on the wall, but even though you turn it off, it's like we're still getting the electricity coming through, right?
Right. So there's 2 major sources of dirty electricity, and my website is called Stop Dirty Electricity. One source is everything you plug inside your house. So remember, any electronics you have plugged in, anything like that will create dirty electricity. If you have the curly Q bulbs, you have LED bulbs now, create a lot of dirty electricity. Solar panels, one of the worst things they ever invented, creates tons of dirty electricity. When I measure a house, I can tell if there's a solar panel on that house or close to it. Also variable speed fans. And I can go into, I don't want to get into too much detail, but then also the power company can pump it in from the grid into your house without your knowledge. The good news is this is out of those 3 radiations from the wire and 3 radiations from the air. This is the only type of radiation they actually make filters for that we can knock down. So that's the good news. So there's 5 major suppliers of those filters. We'll show you 2, I think, on the next screen, on the next PowerPoint. So that's the good news. And the meters, there's 2 major manufacturers of meters. I can get to that if you want me to and show you that.
Yeah, please.
So on the next screen, we have 2 options for dirty electricity. On the left is Greenway. So that's a Greenway meter over here at the top left. And this is a Stetzer meter. All you do is plug them into the wall and you get a number. And normally what I say, in a sleeping area, we want you 30 or less. And in a non-sleeping area, if someone's not highly sensitive, 50, 45, somewhere like that. And these are the Greenway filters down here. And these are the Stetzer filters. Can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, great. And and then there's 3 other manufacturers of filters, but these are the most common that work really well. This is about $35, and this is about $29, $28, $29. So they're both great things. So that's what you can do for the dirty electricity, and that's what the MD, the Master of Public Health, the epidemiology, he was offering to go in, and he would have put filters throughout the school free of charge, no cost to them.
So can you describe what exactly is happening to our bodies? Is it a distance type of thing? Is it touching what's plugged in? How are you being affected by dirty electricity? And
So all of those health issues we went over on those 6 slides, all of those can be affected by dirty electricity. And normally it's within 6 to 8 feet.
okay,
So
that's
remember, this is running on the wires, on the ceilings, on your
Got it.
floors.
So I'm imagining if like a classroom or something, or
Right.
an office, you've got wires above, below, on the
Right.
sides, you're just kind of surrounded. It's almost like you're in a microwave cage of dirty electricity, I guess.
Right. So think of a classroom. If you had to come 8 feet from the left, 8 feet from the right, 8 feet from the back, 8 feet from the front, 8 feet from the ceiling, where was the safe place in that classroom?
Yeah.
Lying flat in the middle of the classroom. But again, we're all about solutions. The good news is I use these all the time, and these work very, very well. And again, this is a Greenway and this is a Stetzer. So I would highly recommend someone buy these particular one or both of these meters and measure. So, and then use the filters to knock it down. There is sometimes there are complex wiring errors. There can be complex wiring errors in a building. So they could actually make some people not feel as well. So if you ever, probably happens in 1 out of 100 people, but if you plug in the filters and all of a sudden, I don't feel so well, then unplug the filters immediately, give me a call. I've got my phone number at the end, and then I'll tell you how to work through with an electrician to fix those complex wiring errors. So there are solutions to this. But again, if you do plug them in and someone doesn't feel well, immediately unplug them. Not a big thing. And then just give me a call or send me an email or a text, and I can walk through with your electrician what to do.
So I have one question. So
Sure.
we have hardwire, we have hardwire home.
For Wi-Fi, for the internet?
Yes. So when that cable is not connected to the laptop or to the computer or to whatever, is that also creating dirty electricity?
That's a very good question. Most of the time, the Ethernet will not create dirty electricity. I've never seen dirty electricity. It has to actually be on the power lines themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The wires in your wall.
Right. Okay.
So that, and just think about, you'll say, hey, I've got to fill up my whole house with these filters. No, just think about where you sit, stand, and sleep, 6 to 8 feet. So do you have to put them out in your garage? No. Now, if you just park your car in the garage, you walk out, get in your car, and then take off. So just think about where you sit, 6 to 8 feet. 6 to 8 feet is the key on things. And so down the hallway, you don't have to put them in, and you have to get smart about this stuff too.
So this would be a perfect thing for somebody to have in their bedroom when they're charging their phone at night, when they're sleeping, or by the office, like when you're sitting by your computer and you're trying to, you connect, you have all those monitors that you have to connect your computer. So probably an office in the bedroom would be a great place to have them.
Oh, yes. And then, wherever you watch TV,
Mm-hmm.
You're close to the walls, you'll spend some time there. So just think about where you sit, stand, and sleep the most. And that's where I normally plug them in, and it's about 6 to 8 feet away. So, and I carry them with me. So when I go out to do a house, do an EMF audit of a house, interactive and remediation, then this is the very last step. After we clean up as much of the other things, we'll talk about the Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth. Then I put these filters in. Because I was in a house in Utah, so we're going through, and remember, any electronic device will create dirty electricity. And so I'm coming through and I'm saying, here's a Vonage phone. Do you guys still use this? It was electronic. Oh, no, we don't. So I unplugged it. And so then I don't have to try to get the dirty electricity down from that because no one uses it anymore. So I have a certain protocol I go through when I do a house. So.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the wired, the 3 radiations from the wire: electric, magnetic, and dirty electricity. So let's look at the radiation through the air. Any other questions about radiation from the wires?
I do. So if the dirty electricity is on the wire, the whole wire, Or is it just the outlet, or is it just the appliance or computer, for example, electronic?
It goes throughout the home. So
Got it.
certain parts of the home will be higher and other parts will be lower. So as you start to put the filters in, they start to lower the entire circuits, if you will.
Yeah, because I've wired a lot of homes, and I've seen, like, for example, let's say you've got a plug in one room, but you have other circuits and wires that you're not plugging that device in that could be adjacent to your head or another wall. I'm just wondering how you know that you're getting all of that by just putting it in one room when there could be other wires on other circuits.
Well, normally what happens is the rooms, the wires we're most concerned about are the wires in the wall, because those are about, your level. And so if you're sleeping in a bedroom, let's just say that, most of the time, maybe it's about 6 feet away from your head to, where the lights are. And a lot of times you'll handle it if you start to mitigate the rest of the house. So that's like, we want to mitigate most of it. And sometimes there is a stray wire that goes over somewhere, but I would just mainly do the places where you sit, stand, and sleep. So if it's a wire in the garage and it just goes from the breaker box to the garage, not too much of a problem. So.
Gotcha, thanks.
So radiation through the air, Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth, commonly called RF. And again, if you want to be ultra safe, with this, you can, measure every single outlet in the house and put them in as many filters as you want. Normally, I try to do a good, better, and best solution depending on what someone's budget is. So we get the major places where they sit, stand, and sleep. So here are things that can cause Wi-Fi, wireless, and Bluetooth. Normally, we think of this big, ugly cell tower right outside, but all of these will actually create Wi-Fi, wireless, or Bluetooth radiation.